Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Of course, an airplane's going to go over as soon as I hit record. Let's jump right into the book of Leviticus, chapter 4. And so now we're going to start talking about something called the sin offering. So you would think that all these things are sin offerings, but not really. So let's see what we got here. Chapter 4 starts, Then the Lord spoke to Moses, Tell the Israelites, when a person sins by straying unintentionally from any of the Lord's commandments, which must not be violated, and violates any one of them. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that, okay, we're making a sin offering if you don't commit this sin on purpose. Maybe it'll speak to that a little more, but you should never do something that you think is sin on purpose, because then you're going to be, you can still ask for forgiveness. If you do something that you're pretty sure, well, yeah, this is against God's law, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want to. I guess you could repent from that, you turn to the Lord, but it's easier to just, first off, know what it is. You know, Jesus says his burden's light, but he says that the law is really simple. Love your neighbor as yourself, love God first, and then love your neighbor as yourself. For the priest, if the high priest, so that's the top dog, at this point in time, it's Aaron, Moses' brother. If the high priest sins so that the people are guilty on account of the sin he has committed, he must present a flawless young bull to the Lord for a sin offering. He must bring the bull to the entrance of the meeting tent before the Lord, lay his hand on the head of the bull, and slaughter the bull before the Lord. So this is the head priest doing this. Then that high priest must take some of the blood of the bull and bring it to the meeting tent. The priest must dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord toward the front of the veil canopy of the sanctuary. Oh, that's right, I'm across the street from an airport. That sucks. Veil canopy of the sanctuary. The priest must put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense that is before the Lord in the meeting tent, and all the rest of the bull's blood he must pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering that is at the entrance to the meeting tent. So in Exodus, when it described all the implements and furniture and things that they had to make so that they could worship God out there in the desert, one of the things about the altar is that it had horns on it. It had these things that stuck up on the corners, the upper corners. Then he must take up all the fat from the sin offering bull. So you're picking up another pattern here, that we're not eating the fat. The fat covering the entrails and all the fat surrounding the entrails, the 2 kidneys with the fat on their sinews, and the protruding lobe the protruding lobe on the liver, which he is to remove along with the kidneys, just as it is taken from the ox of the peace offering sacrifice. And the priest must offer them up in smoke on the altar of burnt offering. But the hide of the bull, all its flesh along with its head and its legs, its entrails and its dung, all the rest of the bull he must bring outside the camp to a ceremoniously clean place, to to the fatty ash pile, and he must burn it on a wood fire. It must be burned on the fatty ash pile. So all you're doing for this sin offering is sending some fat up in smoke. And then you're taking this outside, and by clean, I mean it's ceremonially clean. We'll be talking about what makes things ceremonially clean as we get into this. If the whole congregation of Israel strays unintentionally, and the matter is not noticed by the assembly, and they violate one of the Lord's commandments, which must not be violated, so they become guilty, the assembly must present a young bull for a sin offering when the sin they have committed becomes known. So you're cool until somebody goes, hey, you know that thing that we did last week? Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. So we better make a sin offering for ourselves. They must bring it before the meeting tent. The elders of the congregation must lay their hands on the head of the bull before the Lord, and someone must slaughter the bull before the Lord. Then the high priest must bring some of the blood of the bull to the meeting tent, and that priest must dip his finger in the blood. So it says it's the high priest. There's only one of them. I don't know why it says that priest. Must dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times before the Lord toward the front of the veil canopy. He must put some of the blood on the horns of the altar, which is before the Lord in the meeting tent, and all the rest of the blood he must pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, that is, at the entrance of the meeting tent. Then the priest must take all its fat and offer the fat up in smoke on the altar. He must do with the rest of the bull just as he did with the bull of the sin offering. This is what he must do with it, so the priest will make atonement on their behalf, and they will be forgiven. He must bring the rest of the bull outside the camp and burn it just as he burned the first bull. It is the sin offering of the assembly. So there's going to be leaders of the 12 tribes when they get out there, and I think, I mean, we know from reading Genesis who they are and into Exodus, but as we get into Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, we're going to get in detail into who the 12 tribes are and who the leaders were, and and how they marched and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's what they're talking about. Whenever a leader, by straying unintentionally, sins and violates one of the commandments of the Lord his God, which must not be violated, and he pleads guilty, or his sin that he committed is made known to him, he must bring a flawless goat as his offering. So we're talking about a guy who realizes himself, oh, I messed up, I better do a sin offering. Or his people come up, or maybe his wife. Not saying that that never happens to me. He has to bring a goat. He must bring a flawless male goat as his offering. And flawless means no spots, no blemishes, no illnesses. He must lay his hand on the head of the male goat and slaughter it in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered before the Lord. It is a sin offering. Then the priest must take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering. And he must pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering. Then the priest must offer all of its fat up in smoke on the altar like the fat of the peace offering sacrifice. So the priest will make atonement on his behalf for his sin, and he will be forgiven. So now, all the people in leadership and the whole crowd, but how about the individual person? If an ordinary individual sins by straying unintentionally when he violates one of the Lord's commandments, which must not be violated, and he pleads guilty, or his sin that he committed is made known to him, he must bring a flawless female goat as his offering for the sin that he had committed. He must lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter the sin offering in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. Then the priest must take some of its blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he must pour out all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. Then he must remove all of its fat, just as fat was removed from the peace offering sacrifice. And the priest must offer it up in smoke on the altar for a soothing aroma to the Lord. So the priest will make atonement on his behalf, and he will be forgiven. But if he brings a sheep as his offering for a sin offering, he must bring a flawless female. So it's either a male goat or a female sheep. I don't know why. He must lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it for a sin offering in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. Then the priest must take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering. And he must pour out all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. Then the one who brought the offering must remove all its fat, just as the fat of the sheep is removed from the peace offering sacrifice. And the priest must offer up in smoke on the altar on top of the other gifts of the Lord. So the priest will make atonement on his behalf for his sin, which he has committed, and he will be forgiven. So it seems like you can do this as they say, the blood's in the air. You can pile these on top of each other, these offerings. So, anyway, see you in chapter 5. What are we going to talk about in chapter 5? Let's see. You should read ahead, but I never ask you to. Additional sin offering regulations. Hopefully you're not tired of the rules and regulations, but hey, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible, and you should become familiar with all of it. Some of it's more interesting than other parts, and I don't want to say any of it's boring, but some of it's almost boring. Anyway, peace out.